Hi, everyone. Welcome to the fifth ever Solvio regular call. My name is Dominic Timel. I'm one of the founders and contributors at Solvio Foundation, and we are here to spend the next 30 minutes or so talking about what's new in the world of Solvio. So let's begin. We have this agenda for the call right before us. So I'm going to go chronologically. There's several sort of pathways or routes that we're currently taking, but I think it makes sense to discuss what happened in the last chronologically. So 2 weeks ago, I talked about developing the next version of Amos, which was to use an API. Hey guys, could you please mute yourself? Okay, I muted you. And so without further ado, on Monday, that's what I began to do. I realized that these APIs are much more closed than I was expecting. Google has a closed API. YouTube has a commercial API, which is not cheap at all. I thought it makes sense to develop the Amos app as it will be in the future, the final version, which is not using an API, but using other methods that we'll probably get into in this call. So without further ado, I started developing Pruvio. I got actually pretty far. It can parse mathematical expressions. It can parse equations. I also have an algorithm that checks if two things are equal, are two more things equal. So that's essentially represents the core of the whole product, checking implications, at least for arithmetic statements, or I should say symbolic or algebraic statements. Last week also people started applying to the company through AngelList. I held quite a few interviews, some of them individually at first. Then I started grouping it just because I found it more effective. And I was really happy that not only were amazing people joining, they were applying, they were also deciding to join. So with that, I'd like to invite Ani from Bangalore to the team. How's it going, Ani?
It's going great. It's going great, Dom. Hey guys, glad to be part of this team, and yeah, let's build something.
Awesome, thanks a lot. Also, Evgeny, who is currently living in Prague, joined. Thank you, Evgeny, and how's it going?
Hi, everybody. Everything's fine. I'm just a bit overloaded by work, but I think in a few days I'll be able to spend more time on this project.
Awesome. Glad to have you there. Next, chronologically, there was Daniel, and Daniel is not with us right now. And finally, the other person that joined, Gabriel. So let me maybe say a few words about everyone. Ani is predominantly a backend and database engineer from Bangalore, India. Evgeny is full stack, but lots of experience with React Native. So very likely he will be lead developer slash team lead slash senior developer on our React slash React Native projects. Daniel is a very talented database engineer, also experienced with graph databases, particularly Neo4j, and he's currently living in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and working for the Public Prosecutor's Office. Gabriel is a developer from Lagos, Nigeria. He is predominantly specializing in developing mobile apps, in particular Android. but I have confidence that React Native or React should be very easy for somebody to pick up who has experience with developing for Android. And I'm also in touch with a few more people. Next, I spent some time thinking about the specification of Amos. I think the main challenge that I encountered was sort of structuring topics, actually. So finding a hierarchy for the topics. First question is, why do we need a hierarchy for topics? The reason is academic topics, they form hierarchies. And if somebody says this discusses the Euler line, and another person says this discusses Euclidean geometry, we want them in some degree to be equivalent. So this is not only for the metadata, it is also for searching for topics. It is also for self-attestation of topics. And I think there was one more, which was very likely getting credentials for those topics. How did I decide to handle this? I posted on the Solvio forum, which you can access, anyone can access. It's an open forum at solvio.discourse.group. And essentially what I did there is I separated the topics into what I call categories. The first one I called super high level category. And these are very high level things. So I'll give you an example. Technical topics, arts, vocational skills. So a good indication, or sciences, or social sciences and humanities, things like this. A good indication that something is a very high level topic would be that there exist universities that are specialized only in that field. So for example, MIT, Imperial College, those two are technical universities. London School of Economics and Social Science, that will be a social science university, etc. The next category, right below that, I call fields or disciplines. And those would pretty much correspond to irregular subjects at university when you're deciding what to study. So examples include mathematics, electrical engineering, computer science, history. And next, the next category I'm going to talk about, I call subjects, and that would represent courses, semester-long courses that you take at your university. Examples include complexity theory, computational theory, number theory, I don't know, medieval European history. For example, when it comes to history, I think that you can separate it into 3 types of subjects. You could either study history geographically, you could study the history of Africa or the history of Europe. You could also study history based on a time period. So you could say medieval history, and then by definition that would be, unless you specify further, global history in the times of, say, the High Middle Ages, 1100 to 1500. Or you could look at just one particular topic, and you could study the history of that. So an example would include the history of science, the history of the computer, the history of salt, of all things, or tea. The next category that I had in my proposal for the AMO spec was called topics. And topics are much more specific than subjects. So if you have something like computational theory, a topic would be Turing machines, or lambda calculus, or recursive functions. If you have something like number theory, a topic would be prime numbers, greatest common divisor and least common multiple, the Euler's theorem in number theory, Fermat's little theorem in number theory. So a good indication is theorems are topics. And then while I did not define the lowest of all categories, I did not give it a name, there is also an imaginary category below topics. And that would be things like proof of the Euler's theorem or history of the Euler's theorem. So with this, we have something like 5 levels. Level 4, high level. Level 3, fields or disciplines. Level 2, subjects. Level 1, topics. And level 0, unnamed. And why did I do all this? Because I would like to propose that when it comes to credentialing, the only one that you should be allowed to get credentials for are topics. Now, this makes a lot of sense to me. So let me give you an example in cryptography. So for example, let's say you prepare a work in cryptography, such as the presentation that I gave at the Ethereum meetup in Prague 6 months ago. And I feel like getting credentials for the whole of cryptography would be very, very broad. While at the same time, I feel like getting credentials for the unnamed category would be very, very burdensome and tediously specific. I feel like the topics are a very good compromise. So in cryptography, the topics might be hash functions. When it comes to asymmetric cryptography, which could be a subject itself, the topics in that could be RSA, crypto systems using the discrete log problem, in particular the discrete log problem in ZP, and crypto systems using the discrete log problem in elliptic curves. In particular, for example, the elliptic curve digital signature algorithm and the elliptic curve encryption scheme. So yeah, I think that those topics are very good compromise between high level and low level. Next, I thought a little bit about, yeah, does anyone want to jump in and comment?
Yep. I wanted to ask about the topics. If we would have just science and technologies, or say violoncello and movie directing, is it possible?
Great question. Thank you very much. So at the moment, I don't have a clear answer. We can separate this question into 2 things, which is number 1, on the technical layer, and number 2, on the business layer. On the technical layer, I think that we should develop at first with something very specific in mind, which is technical stuff, particular a bit of math, but not a lot, a bit of electrical engineering, but not a lot, and computer science, because those are the topics that the internet is most interested in learning in the 21st century. But then we can discuss on the business layer what will actually be trying to grow. But I guess we have to keep the business layer in mind when we're developing for it, and then through iteration we'll find out how to repair that, how to modify it and update it and change it. Another reason that technical stuff makes more sense, in my opinion, is because the dependencies in technical stuff are stronger. On average, they're stronger and heavier dependencies. So while, for example, in history or other slightly softer subjects like psychology or sociology or economics possibly, they're like, what do you need to know to learn about the Second World War? Well, it turns out for any particular period in history, all you really need to know is what happened in the previous period. So to learn about what caused the Second World War, you just need to learn about how the First World War ended, what happened in the 20s possibly, but not even that much, and then most importantly, what happened, during the Great Recession, and then that's what allowed dictators like Mussolini and Adolf Hitler to come to power. So for the Second World War, the causes, you just need the previous, the period before, 1913, 1914 to 1939. And this is also the way that history is taught in modern curricula. I did the IGCSE or in the IB a few years back, and that's the way that they taught it. They didn't teach it chronologically, all in one big bulk, like traditionally or like in Eastern European countries, but they taught it by always focusing on one specific topic, one specific period, and teaching us what happened before, and then we can study that period. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is the dependencies in social stuff or in softer subjects are weaker, while the dependencies technical stuff are much stronger. There's no way you can understand RSA crypto system without understanding the concept of a prime number as well as modular arithmetic. Next, I thought of something like the depth of a topic, and I haven't thought that through yet. So I will get to that within the next few days, and again, we'll update on my thoughts. Another thing that is yet to be explored is whether we should separate knowledge and skill. So currently, we kind of assume, that there's just knowledge, but when it comes to things like mathematics, practice and skill are equally important as learning the theorem. There's a chance that this won't be necessary because we can just encode that in the depth itself. So we can say for the Euler line in Euclidean geometry, if you just learn the theorem, maybe it's a depth of 1 out of 5. If you apply it 1 or 2 times, it's a depth of 2 out of 5. And then if you find, all the problems in the world that use that theorem, then you're an expert in that topic. I'm saying this because actually it turns out there are not that many problems, mathematical problems, that use the Euler line. I wrote my my extended essay on the Euler line and found only about 15 problems that use that theorem. So the next insight that I had while thinking about this AMO spec was the following. I feel like, so 2 things. First one, how do we get the metadata? So right now we have one only solution, which is people submitting it themselves. I'd like to propose 2 more solutions. The first one is we either run bots or allow people to run bots, such as for any user, they can either be submitting metadata as themselves, or they can create a bot profile and be submitting it as one of their bots. And these bots, their task will be to go through either books, online resources, or online videos. It's very easy in YouTube, even with just scraping like beautiful soup in Python, to actually get the full transcript of the video. So you can actually run these bots very easily, even on YouTube videos. So that's the second way for people to try to come up with bots, either us or our users, that can automate this metadata collection, such as what do I mean by metadata? Well, it's things like the length, what topic it's on, and most importantly, what are its learning dependencies. Where was I? So this is right now in a very brainstormy phase, because I acknowledge that it would be much cooler if I could actually come up with a proof of concept or some kind of outline for how the bot would work. But brainstorming ideas are better than nothing. The third method I actually find much more interesting, which is we're already kind of decided that we're going to make a Chrome extension for users to be able to submit the metadata as easily as possible at the tip of their click. And I looked at the Chrome extension API, and it turns out that a Chrome extension has access, if the user allows, of course, to quite a lot of data. It can read the browser history, but turns out we won't even need that. We'll just need the functionality of knowing what page the user is currently on. And so what am I getting at? Let's say you're watching a video like Dominic's presentation of cryptography. And let's say you open a new tab like halfway through the video and you look up modular arithmetic. Well, if enough people do this, chances are modular arithmetic is a learning dependency for this resource that talks about cryptography. So using this automated way, we would be allowed to get these learning dependencies automatically. Now, on the technical layer, there are two ways to structure this. Either, we send all of that data to the server, and we handle it there. Of course, all this is assuming the user agrees with all of this, and we have to make it very, very clear what we're doing, because we love our users. But there is another way, which is that all of this actually runs on the client. We don't know anything about what the users are browsing, and we merely give suggestions. So the next time the user opens our extension, there will be a list of suggestions. Hey, you watched this 3 days ago. I'd like to suggest this as a learning dependency because you went on and searched for that topic right after, and then you went back to the video. And the user can either say submit all, or he can pick and choose which learning dependencies are true. So let's jump on a call sometime this week to discuss this stuff. Next, I sort of wanted to give you guys an idea of something I call BOR, the Big Optimistic Roadmap. So I wrote this down. Oh yeah, I know what I was going to say. The last thing that came out of the AmoSpec post on the Solvio forum was the following. An app like ours, which is a platform, is much more dependent at first on the supply side. If we magically, release the app today, magically make it like code it in like 0 minutes and release it, and somehow 100,000 users come and they start searching for stuff, they're not going to get any value from the app. Our idea is all about providing value to our users. And so
Hey, Don, we lost you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh gosh, how long have I been away? What was the last thing that you heard?
15 seconds, I guess.
Oh, okay, good.
Providing value to users. I mean, if you have, yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying something like Google or Wikipedia has a very, very simple front end. The value of their entire app is in the data. They're able to give better results, more accurate results than any other website in their particular field. So, you know, having said all this, I think it makes a lot of sense. And again, we can discuss it on some internal call in the week. But this is just a proposal I'd like to make to focus on the supply side first. So what do I mean by that? We'd make a Chrome extension that would not allow search. It would only allow adding metadata. And we would make an app that would be desktop first, something like mod.amos.ms for moderator. And again, what would it allow? It would allow adding metadata as well as resolving challenges or disagreements among the community as to what are the best, what is the best value for the metadata. So something like the talk page of Wikipedia. So yeah, that's something that I wanted to propose, and let's talk about that in the week. I call this version of our app, I think it should be Amos 1.0 because it's just, you know, it kind of sucks to work really hard on something and then call it 0.1. But since it won't be open to the wide public, but rather to contributors and volunteers, I call it the open beta. So, you know, it's like, let's get real, right? It's very great to have this idea that, you know, everyone's both a searcher and a contributor. But if we look at how actual online communities work, we realize it's a naive view. Any website in the world, whether it's Stack, Exchange, Stack Overflow, Wikipedia, etc., all these, even Facebook possibly, or YouTube is a great example as well. They're not really one-sided platforms. They're really two-sided platforms, right? The average person who visits a Stack Exchange question or answer through Google is not necessarily the same person who actively goes to the website every day to answer new questions. Similarly for YouTube, the average person who watches a video on YouTube is not necessarily the same as the average uploader, as the average popular channel that people watch. So in reality, ours will be a two-sided platform, and this is the proposal is to focus on the supply side. So we'll make a big campaign, try to structure human knowledge as represented by all the learning resources online. So that's what I wanted to say, and let's get to the next point. Amos 2.0, loud release. That app will allow self-attestation of knowledge and search. There's also another tab that I think is very easy to build and it's really, really cool. And that tab would be called Discover. What would Discover do? Discover, if you click on it, it will show you the best topics or learning resources that you should learn, given your current learning profile. So I think this is really, really cool. Like, let's say I'm a C++ developer. Maybe it will give me the hint to check out this learning resource, which is called JavaScript for C++ developers. or let's say I'm proficient in economics and I'm also interested in technology, well, maybe it will suggest the great blog Stratechery together with the podcast Exponent, which is a great blog for the business of technology. So what I'm trying to say is, if we think really, really big, then we can think of Amos as a better search engine, a better Google. So Google, the way it works is, at least the way it started, is very syntactic. They just scraped web pages and they found anchor, what you call it, anchor HTML tags, and when they gained a collection of some amount of stuff, they ran a very simple algorithm and they assigned a number called PageRank to every single website. So it's a very syntactic way of doing things. This is an idea of creating a semantic search engine, one where we actually know stuff that really only humans can determine for sure, can decide for sure about the resources. And obviously, as you guys will know, we're starting with education. But actually, if you really open your minds very widely, education is, I would say, most of the internet. If you disallow for things like Spotify or Netflix, where you're going directly to the content, and like very trivial facts, like actual facts, like who, like for example, news, like who won the election or what was the results of a sports match, then most things people look up for could be viewed as education in a very, very broad sense. So what do people actually Google? How do I tie my shoelaces? Well, that's learning something. They Google Brexit. Well, that's learning about current events. And obviously, they learn for something which can be called traditional education. Or they Google, how to do things, like how do I have this bug in ReasonML, how do I correct it? Is that education? I don't know. Well, if it's not a bug, if it's an actual like concept that you're struggling with, definitely. If it's a bug, maybe not. So why am I saying all this? Because I feel like search will be much better, especially for learning resources, but potentially in the future, other stuff as well. But I also feel like discovering new resources will be much, much better. So Google, like, it's actually not that good at recommending you stories or whatever it calls it, because it doesn't know you semantically. Imagine a platform that knows every single topic that you know, together with the level, including, by the way, the time that you studied it or that you learned that stuff. It will be able to recommend stuff at a very, very granular level.
That sounds really complex.
No, I mean, so what I said was just very, very like trippy, but it boils down to a very simple thing, right? So we have in our mobile app, we have 3 tabs: search, profile, and the middle tab would be called discover. You would click it, and we run a very simple algorithm. It would probably be less than 10 lines of code that, given your learning profile, it will look up for learning resources that match those learning dependencies. Right? And I don't know if I'm like completely out of this world, but in my naive view, this actually would work with the current model and would provide better recommendations than Google, which is pretty like cool thing to do, or at least to try. The next version of the app, Amos 3.0, is where we add social networking. So together with these three tabs, we had a new one, maybe the second from the left, called Feed. If you click on it, you'll be able to see what your friends have searched for, possibly, I don't know, we'll have to think about this, what learning paths they have enrolled on, and most importantly in the future, what things they gained credentials for, as well as what stuff they consumed and added metadata for. So that's something that I'm kind of excited about as well. I mean, it's an experiment. We'll see if the social networking stuff works or doesn't work. The traditional, or not traditional, but existing online communities, they are distinguish themselves, or you can put them on a scale of how much social networking they allow. Facebook obviously is its only functionality, social networking. Then you have something like YouTube, where I think they recently added sending messages, but it's not the primary feature. Primary feature is watching videos. So you have something like Stack Overflow or GitHub, where can you follow people in GitHub? I guess you can, but like it's not really like taken seriously. In Stack Overflow, I don't think you can. Can you send messages to people on these websites? Neither of those websites allow that. So, yeah, we'll see how this goes. And of course, some functionality to add friends. For example, this could be implemented with a code that you can share with your friends, a secret code, for example, on Facebook. And anyone who uses that code can directly add you as their friend. There doesn't have to be this double-sided handshake. And another cool thing of this version could be your actual profile. So you go to linkedin.com/in/x. Well, now you could go to Solvio or Amos dot whatever /u for user /dtimo. And that will show my exact learning profile, including, for example, what I've self-attested for, what I've added metadata for, and most importantly in the future, what I have credentials for. This at the beginning will be just a cool feature, but in the future, once we integrate with Solvio, this will be the way that people will be sharing their academic profiles with the world. That's the idea. Where were we? So yeah, I think, yeah, let's just continue. So without further ado, I'd like to discuss the big optimistic roadmap that I have put together. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. Sorry about jumping back and forth. There is some discrepancy between, our brands. Are we Amos? Are we Solvio? It's just the way things work out is the way things work out. We started a Solvio Foundation. Our first main product is Amos. Probably the way I see it now, Amos can be our B2C brand. Solvio can be our B2B brand, because it's the credentialing system. It is what we go to universities, national governments, and try to explain to them that an open credentialing system, open to anyone, open to whatever you want to learn, and open to whichever way you want to get credentials, and also open to whichever way you want to learn, is good. All we need is one single accredited entity, such as the university or a national government, to say, yes, I trust your system. Solvio reputation of 100 is equivalent in our system as a bachelor's degree. If an American, North American, or European entity does this, we're done. Because if you have a European degree, you can easily get it accredited in US and in the rest of the world. If you have an American degree, you can very easily get it accredited in Europe and the rest of the world. So that's what gives me so much optimism about this whole project. The Solvio project itself is we just need one entity. So the big optimistic roadmap coming up. Q2 of this year, which ends end of June, we release the open beta for volunteers and contributors around the world that want to help people and want to be part of the self-learning community to categorize the world's knowledge as represented by learning resources on the web. Q3, we could add search functionality and discover functionality. Gives us also time to think about the search algorithm, because that in itself ain't trivial. And also in Q3, if we have the corresponding developer activity, we could release the beta version or the prototype of Pruvio. What's the prototype of Pruvio? It's just a very simple version, excuse me, that hard codes that you're learning regular algebra / arithmetic. So it's a version that is oriented mainly for 99% of students of mathematics. In the future, we'll parameterize all of the operations to allow for any mathematical theory. Turns out, the regular math that you learned in school, like plus means plus and times means times, and these operations are both like associative and commutative, and all these properties. It's only one possible mathematical theory. You can have non-associative algebras, and with this parameterization, we'll be able to include any mathematical theory. I think for that version, we want to rebuild all the code to make it, because then we'll have some experience, and we'll also be contacting people from academia to advise us on this project. There's a very deep academic field called symbolic algebra or computer algebra that deals with exactly this topic. We are doing that field, but for the first time ever, we're applying it to education, to a chatbot that will allow anyone to learn anything or to learn math with the full tutor experience online. Hey guys, I'm so sorry. Give me 1 second. I have to open the door for somebody. So I will mute myself, stay on the call, and I will unmute. Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry about that. Sometimes life gets in the way. Then Q1 of 2022, we could release Course Hunt. We would try to work with coding boot camps, math camps, anyone who runs a private school, and as well as anyone who runs a traditional school, secondary schools, colleges, universities, to ask them if they think that students should be allowed to take short-term courses whatever and whenever they want. And in Q3, we'll also try to get pre-seed funding. I will be starting fundraising within 2 weeks, not full-time, but assembling a short list and sending out emails. Because I think the earlier you start, the better. You can establish relationships, they can follow the project, and if we meet our goals, then we can talk about possible funding in order to make this project stay nonprofit. And in Q4, in the ideal scenario, we get into Y Combinator. A few of us move into California, and we get their incredible mentorship to move this forward. In Q1 of 2020, this is very, very optimistic. The Solvio system itself will be credited. Oh, that requires that we actually release it. I guess I wanted to say that in Q4, we also release Solvio. And then in a few months, with a lot of luck, it will actually be accredited. And then a long time after, we can actually accept first full-time students. I'm expecting that our partners in this venture will help us with spreading the word, with marketing essentially. If we partner up with a university, they will help us. If we partner up with a national government, they will help us. I really think this education model is better because it uses technology to go to the really core and develop an education system a priori, while existing solutions that I've seen are based on an education model developed in the 12th century and merely use education to make it better. Finally, what happened in the last 2 weeks is we've been talking about this in the last few regular calls. We really wanted to get in touch with Learn Anything. And so in the last 2 weeks, in particular yesterday, we did it. We had a call with Learn Anything. Learn Anything is an app that you can access at learn-anything.xyz. And what it allows you to do is very similar to what we want Amos to allow you to do. Search for a topic, and you get a list of resources. So their status is they have an app that's live, and they have mockups, and as well as they're developing it, one person full-time, the next version. We synced our ideas. I really like the fact that we have not only the same goal, the same end goal, we also have the same methodology. We're both predominantly thinking of getting our data from user submissions. We slightly differ in the pathways towards that goal. Our idea is essentially, let me say it like this. Their idea is for users to curate study plans that would be those what we call learning paths, those two are equivalent, learning paths and study plans. So in their model, these learning paths, study plans are manual. In our model, users are not curating study plans. They are submitting metadata for the resources, and then the learning path search or learning path output is done using an algorithm. So we have an automatic learning path generation. They have a manual one. Which one is better? I don't know. My current feeling and I also mentioned this in the call, obviously, is that their solution might be better at first. I think our solution allows for a more granular approach, might be better long term. I also brought up that we could get the second from the first. The way that for example, crafting those study plans could not just be linear, just a sequence of learning resources. It could actually be tree based. And if it's tree based, then we would actually get information about the metadata. In other words, the way that users craft these study plans is the way we would get, one of the ways we could get metadata for the learning resources dependencies themselves. My kind of conclusion after attending the call and thinking about it is that it really depends. Here, let me say one more thing first. All software is developed for some end goal. What kind of end goal do we want? I feel like these study plans will be much more fixating and possibly even centralizing the powers in this decentralized learning space. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say Oxford comes up with the learning path and it's 10 Oxford courses. Well, that's great. It's probably going to be number one. But maybe you want a more plug-and-play system. Maybe course number 2 is better provided from Cambridge. So I feel like, and you don't want to, how do you fork 10 courses? What it does do that? Let's see that the other one has, let's say it has 15,000 upvotes. And if you fork it, does it go to 0 upvotes? Does it stay the same at 15,000 upvotes? How would that work? And more crucially, we want in our model for anyone to have the option to write an amazing learning resource and without having any followers on Twitter or YouTube, just through the app itself for it to rise to the top. And I think that with fixated study plans, it is much more time-based fixated. Yeah, so precisely for what I explained. If the study plan has 1 million upvotes and I come up with a better learning resource, I am in a much worse position to compete either with the study plan itself or in one of its components, because the other one already has a momentum, a mass of upvotes. Well, in our model, it's less about just plus ones, but more about, for example, the average rating. So if a resource, 10 people rated it, but they all gave it 5 stars, maybe it's better than something that has a 4 out of 5 by a lot of people. So maybe there's some randomness to the algorithm. Maybe it recommends this to some people just for the algorithm to try it out. And if people continue liking it, well, with enough time, it will overcome the big guy. So after the call and after thinking about it, I came to the conclusion that all of this, like either of these two solutions, really depend on what the supply side wants. So as already discussed, we are brutally dependent on the content, on our data, essentially you could call it. And so I feel like what really should matter, which of these paths we choose, is what people like to submit, what people actually end up submitting more information of, on average, in bulk, of either of these two options. If we realize that people are more likely to submit study plans, that will lead to much higher supply. It will probably lead to a much better experience for the demand side. If we realize that people are more likely to submit metadata, the same thing could be said. I think it's quite hard to determine which of these two users would submit more. I would slightly wager that it's metadata, and I'll tell you why. It's easier. That's just the only reason, actually. Let's say I'm on a learning resource. It's easier to click a Chrome extension, say this required this and this and that, either because I have that knowledge and I'm glad I was able to use it, and I'm aware that that knowledge gave me the ability to understand this at a deeper level, or it's because I don't have that knowledge and now I'm pissed because I didn't know that I had to learn this before starting this, and I have to go back and learn something else. Right? So it could be either you're happy that you know it, and most importantly, you're aware that you know it. That's the hardest part, or you're frustrated or pissed that you don't know it. And while crafting study plans, in my opinion, requires an expert. Really, it requires proficiency in the field. And the thing about study plans is nobody really has that knowledge. Like you don't, like the regular, like for example, I recently learned about blockchain, Ethereum. I onboarded myself into that field. Well, I read one article that was blockchain level 101. I read another one that was blockchain level 102. And finally, after 100 things, I became level 200. But it's not like I went and read 100 101 articles and compared them all, which one is the best one. Then went down to level 2, read 100 of them, and compared which one is the best one. And I feel like there's not really anyone in the world that would be like that, right? So this model sort of assumes not that you're a domain expert. It assumes that you're a learning resource domain expert. And yeah, there are very few people that are that. While in our model, you don't have to be a learning resource expert. You don't even have to be a domain expert, which is superset. You can just be the average user who is aware of the knowledge that he used, as well as the knowledge that he didn't have. So that's pretty cool. Our plan was, so we concluded the call by saying, we have the same direction. We're taking slightly different paths. We both listen to each other's ideas, and we're big fans of them. So we will see how the other view updates our own. We'll think about this for a few days, and we'll get back to each other on Wednesday to discuss if we want to collaborate further. I have optimism that we do want to collaborate further. That's pretty much it. My next plan for the next few days is really to come up with to summarize the entire talk. Hey, Evgeny, could you scroll a little bit up, please, if you're still listening? Thank you so much. To summarize the entire regular call number 5, I worked for a few days on Pruvio. I realized it's doable. That was the big question for me, like, can this be done? I realized yes, and I'm quite far, but the main thing is Amos right now, so start focusing on that. Wrote up a specification, realized quite a few things, realized that we need to focus on the supply side. And so making a proposal that we first build the technology in the front end for that. We had a call with Learn Anything, where we saw that our idea is very, very similar. User submissions give us data, run some algorithms on that data, allow anyone to learn anything. But we realized we have slightly different ways of doing that. Our learning path algorithm is automatic. Their study plan curation is manual. They're not necessarily incompatible. We might be able to get metadata from the manual crafting of study plans. And we decided we are going to. I think it depends on what users like to and are more likely to submit. And we decided we're going to spend a few days, both of us thinking about it. Well, not both of us, but both teams, and have a call to discuss more and get in touch again, and have another call on Wednesday. And last but probably most importantly, there's been some amazing new team members joining the team. Ani from Bangalore, Evgeny from Prague, Daniel from Sao Paulo, and Gabriel from Nigeria. I'm in touch with a few more people. We should not go past the 10 developer count, because then it just makes funding, I think, harder. It just makes it more stressful for we can discuss this, but if we find like up to 10 really good people, I think that we can go through with it. Again, this is something that we can discuss. We are all of us are by definition interested in making this idea of decentralizing granular education come to life. And I think that more developers is very likely to mean better products, more features, more users. And that's it. So sorry guys, I was talking for so long. I guess I should have taken questions, excuse me, or comments, or any other forms of contributions. So hit me. What are your thoughts on Pruvio, new team members, AMO specification, learn anything? I also am fine with you either not being interested in anything, that is fine, as well as not wanting to contribute in this call, because
I'm Gabriel.
Contribute either on Slack or on an internal call. But I think Gabriel wants to say something. Gabriel, the floor is yours.
Yes, I want to say something. You talked about focusing on the supply side for the for Amos. So I want to just be sure. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can very well.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, can you hear me now? All right.
Yes.
Okay, very good, very good. You were saying something about the supply.
Yes. Gabriel, we can't hear you. So I think, wait, is he muted? Maybe I can unmute him. He's not muted, so I don't know why his mic isn't working. So closing thing I'd like to say, thank you so much, guys, for taking your free time to join this call, as well as expressing interest in working on this project. We're all working on this, in our free time. Most of us have very high opportunity costs. We're very good developers, and so this spending your free time on it, and hence believing in this vision, and hence being a founder of the project, I really appreciate. So there's still a lot of work ahead of us, but I think interest is the first step. And as we all know, the first step is the hardest one. So let's build something great.
True. Good. Now, I want to ask. I don't know. Can you hear me? I think I went off last time.
Yes.
Hello. Can you hear me? Yeah, very good. The app itself. Now, my question is that will there be probably an algorithm, like a back end, whereby the user would the app would just be probably like would just be a shadow, in my opinion, for the user to have access to the entire the entire mission that we've been talking about since the decentralization of education. The app will just probably be a front end for it, but there will be like an algorithm behind that will be able to probably combine different user demands and then bring out the best. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. What I mean, you said focusing on the supply side. So when you create, for example, a Chrome extension, with this Chrome extension now, will it be the one, giving the solutions, or will there be probably an algorithm like at the backyard, conjuring up the solutions, then the Chrome
No, no, no.
extension
So
just displaying those.
I should have made this more clear. By demand side, I mean
Yeah.
searchers. By supply side, I mean contributors of metadata. So you're right, there's going to be two functionalities for app in version 2.0. First one is submitting metadata or study plans. Second one is searching.
Yes.
When I say focus on the supply side first, by that I mean don't allow at first search, only allow categorization
Okay.
of human knowledge.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
And so,
does that make
if
sense? So,
I can I yeah. If I did get it right,
yes.
we would have any what it was mode Amos MS application, which would allow to do almost the same things that the Chrome extension will.
Yes. I mean, it will allow all of the things of the Chrome extension, but it will also allow some concept of, resolving disputes like arbitration or differences in opinion. If we have some kind of hierarchical model with admins, with moderators, and with users, that will be over there. If we have some sort of reputation system like Stack Overflow, that will be over there. There is a lot of work to be done, yeah, I think that answers your question. I think a good goal would be to sharpen up the specification within the next 1 to 2 weeks. I think if I work on this full time, and if anyone else wants to join in the discussion on the Solvio forum or on internal calls for the specification, that'd be great as well. And I think that within the next, and together with Learn Anything as well, I think that in the next 2 weeks, if we figure out a specification, then we can begin coding in 2 weeks. It's just that I really think for a project like this, whose backend is quite complex. I mean, nobody in history has tried to structure human knowledge in a semantic way. Then I think specification is very, very important. We want to be building something that that will, at the end of the day, our only goal is that when users search something, we give them the best results. Right? In that sense, we're like Google. But we also have another goal, which is that as many people are submitting as high quality metadata as possible. In that sense, we're like Wikipedia.
Okay.
And the last thing I wanted to say before we conclude is, yeah, so we have a Slack channel that is for like people who want to be part of the team more internally. We also have a Solvio forum. The discourse, I think, is much better for a discussion of ideas such as the specification, and because it's much better to write and read things in Markdown than on Slack. And so I just like to invite you guys to join in the discussion there, if you feel like you can and want to contribute. So yeah, I guess I wanted to say, don't be shy. In the Solvio forum, think of it like GitHub. Post your thoughts, and let's get this together and make it happen.
All right. So yeah, but I'll still have to ask some questions later on, anyways.
That's fine. That's fine. Feel free to either post them on the forum, whether it's in one of the topics, or you create your own topic, or on Slack, whatever. The reason we're using the forum is because it's very public, and since it's meant for high-level stuff such as discussion of specification, education, and learning, I think it's better if this content is public and anyone can join in the discussion later on. Slack is meant for, I think, fast communication. You're developing with your pals and like you're pushing stuff and you just want a way to cooperate and collaborate.
Right.
But like discussion stuff can be done over there. What did I want to say? We are a very open company. We want to be as open as possible and allow anyone to join in our efforts. And we started by doing these regular calls fully public. And that has actually turned out very well for us. Now there's people watching the regular calls, there's people going to them and watching them. And so I, again, have this feeling like before that making this public, the forum will be great, because in the future people will be able to join us in discussion. They will be able to read up on what we have done so far when this project becomes much bigger, and we get like the whole world talking about how to structure education. Cool. So thanks a lot, guys, for joining. It's been a very nice 90 minutes, and let us reconnect whoever wants to join on Monday afternoon time. Would Monday 3 p.m. work for you guys? Why don't I ask you on Slack, and we can discuss it there. You can either tell me if you're available or not. Cool.
Yeah.
Hey guys, have a great rest of the day. See you on Slack.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye.